Friends, today I am going to share with you the history of India and Pakistan. This journey begins from British India and continues all the way to the independence of 1947. Since the history is quite vast, I will present it in different parts. In this series on the history of Pakistan and India, we will explore the pre-British era, when Hindus and Muslims lived together in Hindustan. After that, we will learn about the arrival of the British East India Company, its trade, and later its rule. Then we will look into Hindu-Muslim relations, followed by the War of Independence in 1857. We will also cover the formation of the Congress and the Muslim League, the Caliphate movement, the Nehru Report, Jinnah's 14 points, and later the 1940 Lahore Resolution, which marked the demand for Pakistan. Finally, we will reach the partition and the birth of India and Pakistan. So, let's begin today's video, where we will talk about the pre-British era, provincial and political system of Hindustan. The pre-British era of Hindustan is most prominently remembered for the Mughal Empire. From the late 16th century to the early 18th century, the Mughal rulers transformed Hindustan into a centralized and powerful empire. The emperor was the head of the empire, and under him were the provinces. Each province was governed by a subedar, who held political and military authority. Alongside him was the Divan, responsible for finance and revenue, and the Qazi, responsible for justice and law. This system remained strong because everything operated under the emperor's supervision. These nobles were responsible for collecting revenue, tax, from the people and forwarding a portion to the empire. Through this system, the central government received money and the military was funded. However, as the Mughal emperors began to weaken, the Jagirdars started acting as independent rulers in their regions. After the death of Aurangzeb in 1707, the empire began to decline. Provinces such as Awadh, Bengal, Hyderabad, and Punjab started considering themselves practically independent. This was the very situation that later opened the doors for European traders to interfere. Still, during the Mughal period, Hindustan's political system functioned with order, where law, governance, and justice remained strong. That is why Hindustan continued to be a hub of trade and learning. The social life of pre-British Hindustan was full of colors and traditions. Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, Jats, Rajputs, Pathans, and many other tribes and communities lived here. Although differences did exist, in daily life most people lived and worked together. Life in the villages was very simple. Agriculture, rivers, and cattle rearing were the main sources of livelihood. People worked in the fields during the day, and at night they gathered in the panchayat or shopal for discussions and decision-making. The panchayat system formed the foundation of society, where elders resolved disputes and made collective decisions. Urban life was different from the villages. Cities were vibrant with bustling markets. Major cities such as Delhi, Agra, Lahore, Multan, Banaras, and Hyderabad were full of madrasas, mosques, temples, and workshops. Men were usually engaged in farming, trade, or military service, while women managed households, wove clothes, and looked after children. Education was also an important part of social life. In Muslim madrasas, Arabic and Persian were taught, while in Hindu paths Hadith, Sanskrit, and regional languages were taught. Traditions, festivals, and fairs added vibrant colors to social life. Festivals like Diwali, Holi, Eid, Basant, and Muharram reflected the diversity of the communities. Folk tales, stories, and poetry were also a significant part of daily life, which continues to be central to South Asian culture even today. Together, All these elements created a society that was colorful, influential, and dynamic. And it was this society that later European traders witnessed with their own eyes, describing Hindustan as the golden treasure of the world. Before the arrival of the British, Hindustan was considered one of the richest economies in the world. Historians and travelers often referred to it as Sonkichidia, the golden bird, because of its immense wealth and prosperity. The fertile lands of the Indo-Gangetic plain produced abundant crops of wheat, rice, sugarcane, and cotton. Bengal was famous for its muslin cloth, which was so fine and delicate that even European queens and nobles desired it. Gujarat and the Malabar coast were renowned for spices, while Kashmir produced exquisite shawls. Trade routes connected Hindustan with Central Asia, the Middle East, and Europe. Caravans traveled across deserts and mountains, carrying textiles, spices, jewels, and metals. At the same time, Indian ports like Surat, Maisulapatnam, and Calicut became centers of international trade. Merchants from Arabia, Persia, China, and even Africa came here to exchange goods. Internal trade within India was equally vibrant. Villages produced raw materials like cotton, while towns specialized in weaving and crafts. Skilled artisans produced metalwork, pottery, jewelry, and handlooms that were famous worldwide. Local markets, bazaars, thrived, and weekly fairs attracted buyers and sellers from far and wide. Gold, silver, and coins circulated widely in the economy. Taxes collected by jagirdars and nawabs filled the treasuries of rulers, which were then spent on grand architecture, armies, and patronage of the arts. The prosperity of Hindustan's economy was so great that European traders saw it as a paradise for business opportunities. Religion and culture. Hindustan's culture before the British was an extraordinary blend of multiple religions, traditions, and philosophies. The Mughal Empire, despite being a Muslim dynasty, ruled over a vast Hindu majority population. And over time, both communities influenced each other's culture. Religion played a central role in people's lives. Hindus worshipped in temples, celebrated festivals like Diwali and Holi, and followed rituals tied to their caste and traditions. Muslims built magnificent mosques, studied in madrasas, and celebrated Eid, Muharram, and other Islamic occasions. Sikhs, who emerged as a distinct community in Punjab, developed their own unique religious and cultural identity. This coexistence led to a flourishing of composite culture. For example, in architecture, Mughal emperors built structures like the Taj Mahal, Jama Masjid, and Fatehpur Sikri, which combined Persian, Turkish, and Indian styles. In art and literature, Urdu and Persian poetry thrived alongside Sanskrit epics and regional languages like Punjabi, Bengali, and Marathi. Music and dance were also integral to cultural life. The Mughal courts patronized classical music, Qawwali, and Kathak dance, while folk traditions flourished in villages and towns. Food too became a cultural expression, with Mughal cuisine blending Central Asian flavors with Indian spices. Despite religious differences, people often participated in each other's festivals and fairs. This cultural harmony, though not without conflicts, created a rich and diverse civilization that amazed foreign travelers. Writers from Europe and the Middle East described Hindustan as not just wealthy in material terms, but also spiritually and artistically advanced. Conflict and challenges. Although Hindustan was immensely wealthy and culturally rich, it was not free from internal challenges. The strength of the Mughal Empire began to weaken after the death of Aurangzeb in 1707. The central authority that once united the subcontinent slowly started to break apart. Regional rulers, who were once loyal governors under the Mughal system, began to act independently. The Nawab of Bengal, the Nizam of Hyderabad, and the rulers of Awadh declared autonomy in their respective territories. In the Deccan, the Marathas rose as a powerful force, challenging Mughal authority. In the northwest, the Sikhs gradually organized into a formidable political and military power. The decline of strong central authority, coupled with regional rivalries and internal divisions, made Hindustan vulnerable. It was precisely during this period of political weakness that foreign powers began to see opportunities for intervention. This set the stage for European traders to gradually transform themselves from merchants into political rulers. The first encounter with Europeans. The story of Europe's arrival in Hindustan begins long before the British. In the 15th century, European nations were desperately searching for sea routes to Asia. The Portuguese were the first to succeed. In 1498, Vasco da Gama reached the Malabar coast of India at Calicut. The Portuguese established trading posts and forts along the western coast, including Goa, which became their stronghold. For nearly a century, they dominated trade in the Indian Ocean, bringing spices and goods to Europe. After the Portuguese came the Dutch. The Dutch East India Company set up factories in different coastal towns and became strong competitors in the spice trade. They were more active in Southeast Asia, but their presence in India was also significant. The French followed, establishing their own East India Company in the 17th century. They built trading settlements in Pondicherry, Chandarnagora, and other regions, competing with both the Dutch and the British. Finally came the British, who in 1600 had established the English East India Company. They set up factories in Surat, Madras, Bombay, and Calcutta, focusing only on trade. But unlike the Portuguese or the Dutch, the British were patient and opportunistic. They carefully observed India's political fragmentation and slowly built not only their trade network but also military strength. What began as small coastal trading posts would eventually transform into one of the largest empires in history. But in the pre-British era, Europeans were still seen as outsiders, merchants who had come for spices, cloth, and wealth. None could have imagined then that these same merchants would one day rule over Hindustan.